I have never liked camps and on. I've hated them since I was a kid, and now I'm outright terrified of them. Places like Olyonke and Artak. Maybe for someone these places feel like home, but I would never go there. I never liked the atmosphere in camps or the people who went there. It always gave me a bad feeling. My parents once wanted to send me, but I begged them not to. After this story, I don't just hate camps, I am scared of them. I used to wander through forests sometimes, mostly to be alone, sometimes to pick berries. One day, I was walking and noticed something unusual ahead. It was a road. It was asphalt and completely out of place, cutting through the thickets. It was in terrible condition, and yet I felt drawn to it. My sixth sense screamed at me to leave, but my curiosity overpowered my fear. After 5 minutes, I reached a checkpoint. A sign loomed above, but the name was erased. It seemed to be some kind of camp. The guard booth was empty, its windows boarded up, and the barrier on the ground was smashed to pieces. I stepped inside. The road led a few meters to a small parking lot. One car sat there. It was an old, rotting Zaguli. I looked inside. Darkness. At my own risk, I opened the door, and brown swampy water gushed out like a fountain. I jumped aside. The stench hit me instantly. Even after 10 seconds, it was still pouring out of the car. What the hell? Is this rainwater? The car must have been there decades for that much water to accumulate. I looked at the roof. A small hole explained it. Despite this, I pressed on. And that was the stupidest thing I've ever done. The camp was typical, I guess. Buildings on either side, dining hall on the left, shower and toilets behind it, and medical center beyond that. 10 one-story buildings lined the alley, 5 on each side, 3 rooms per building. Beyond them there was a forest. To the right of the last building, there was a beach. It was a perfect children's camp, except everything was decayed. The windows were smeared with grime, and doors were boarded up. It was 8 p.m., and the sky was gathering clouds. I walked to the beach, and it was stunning. Clean water, long shore, shallow and calm. It was beautiful and almost unreal. I did not care I was only in my underwear, because it was a warm summer evening. I swam for half an hour. Then the rain started. Light at first, and then like a hurricane. The wind howled, waves towered like walls, and the rain was ice cold, as if autumn had arrived overnight. I screamed. I was barely clothed. The wind ripped my clothes off, carrying them into the thickets. I ran after them along the beach, desperate to grab at least my pants. I kept chasing them through the forest. It was a stupid, terrifying mistake. The hurricane was intense, and a tree had fallen not far from the beach. I panicked and ran toward the camp, searching for an unboarded door, but there was none. Then I remembered the first aid station, which had seemed open earlier. I did not even know how dangerous it could be. I ran there, and yes, it was really open. I practically jumped inside and slammed the door. It was dark, but I did not care. I was finally out of the rain. I had to wait it out. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. The downpour did not stop. I had no idea what to do, and I definitely did not want to spend the night in an abandoned camp. It was already 9:30, and darkness had fully fallen. Great. I was stuck in some rotten first aid station, alone in an incomprehensible abandoned camp. Then, from the window, I saw a silhouette in the distance. It was on the beach. A figure emerged from the forest. Its face was hidden, cloaked, hood up. The figure walked along the road. Could they have a car? Could they know the way out? Relief rushed through me. As it neared the medical center, I ran to the door, but when I opened it, the street was empty. Completely empty. My heart stopped. Where had it gone? I turned my head and froze. It was a meter away, at my feet. Or not exactly a person. It raised its face, and I could not comprehend what I was seeing. It had no nose. There was just a hollow where it should have been. It had huge, bulging eyes and a gaping hole for a mouth. It was showing teeth, but no tongue. The entire face was pocked with rotten holes. I screamed, slammed the door, and fell backward, hitting my head on the table. It started approaching. I heard it. Then I heard pounding. It was knocking on the door for 5 minutes, over and over, each hit stronger than the last. Eventually, It slammed so hard, the building shook. I panicked. It was only a matter of seconds before it would get in. I smashed the window with my hand, cutting myself, but I did not care. I jumped onto the filthy ground, covered in mud and filth. It had already broken through the door. Screaming, I ran into the forest blindly. I tripped and scraped my knees, but I kept running. For 15 minutes straight, I ran with only adrenaline pushing me forward. I crashed into a car, smashing its left mirror and flying forward. The driver jumped out, swearing at me. I looked at him, and he flinched. He grabbed me into the car, yelling, "What are you running for? Are you insane?" I explained everything in a near fainting panic. He frowned, then said it was an old abandoned Soviet camp, standing empty since 1954. No one knew exactly why it was abandoned, but rumors said there had been constant fights, assaults, and terrible incidents there. After one major event, the administration vanished, and the place was left to rot. Apparently, travelers occasionally stumbled across it. He told me I was lucky, and that what I saw was nothing compared to other dangers there. He said it was good that I had not gone to the canteen. He told me that something there, some anomaly, could drive a person mad or worse. There were no physical dangers, but stepping into that room could literally blow your mind. He himself had come that evening to swim in the lake, but fumes drove him back to his car. After waiting out the night there, he gave me old, worn clothes from the trunk and sent me to the train. I never went back into the forest. I caught a bad cold from running through the hurricane, but compared to what had happened at the camp, that was nothing. Back in 1996, when I was a barefoot student, I had a knack for chasing trouble. My partner in crime was a friend nicknamed Shavel. Whenever we had a break from studying, we were off in search of the next adventure. I remember we once bought a beat-up-old Zaguli just so we could roam farther afield. We weren't exactly clumsy guys, so before long, we had it running like new. It was January 1996. All of our exams were over, and the holidays had begun. We had nothing to do at all. The winter was not especially cold. I was in the dorm, passing the time making little figurines from modeling clay. That day I was shaping a goofy dinosaur, wearing a motorcycle helmet. Shavel suddenly burst into the room, grinning ear to ear. He'd finally won over the girl he had been chasing for months. That was not why he was excited though. He'd heard a rumor about a village of cannibals not far from our city. Naturally, I laughed right in his face and called it nonsense, but he stood his ground and launched into the legend. The story went like this. In the chaos of the country's collapse, an isolated, poverty-stricken settlement turned to alcohol and madness. First, they killed and ate each other out of hunger. Then, they began setting traps along the highway, robbing and eating unlucky motorists. And once you taste human flesh, he claimed, you will crave it for life. I laughed again, but agreed to investigate just for fun. Maybe seeing the place would put the silly story to bed. Shavel pulled out a map and pointed to the place. I still remember the name. It was called Uchuzanoi. Nearby were the villages of Nizhny Gryazy and Vesolyazhizhin. Sounds like they have a good time there, I joked, scratching my head. We did not waste time. Into our backpack went a couple of cans of stew, some matches, a bottle of vodka. We did not drink, but we always carried one just in case. 2 flashlights, a flare gun, and finally, a copper coin stamped with a smiling face on both sides. It was our good luck charm. We set out in the evening, just to make it creepier. It took us under an hour to reach Uchuzanoi. The road was quiet. The sun had already set, and there were fewer cars passing by. I started cracking jokes about drunken cannibals, but Shavel was unnaturally serious. He swore he believed the story, and he was genuinely afraid. The atmosphere began to get under my skin. His plan was to leave the car near Gryazy and approach Uchuzanoi on foot by a standabout route. I agreed. After all, if we were going to do this, we might as well soak up the nightmare properly. My skepticism began to slip. What if it was true? If the cities had descended into crime and murder, what could be happening out here in the provinces? Lost in our own thoughts, we reached Nizhny Gryazy. We turned off about 300 meters before the village. We took a country road, parked up, and then set off on foot in our combat boots, camouflage, and VVS jackets. We kept pushing through the undergrowth toward our target. Griazi lived up to its name of mud. There were sagging houses, a rusting playground, frozen piles of filth, and heaps of trash underneath the snow. Not a single living soul in sight. Guess the folks from Utruzanoy ate them, I muttered, half joking. Shavel gave a nervous laugh. We explored the little settlement and found it truly abandoned. That is when the real unease set in. It was partly from the eerie emptiness and partly from the prickling sense that someone else was there. We decided it must be dogs. After debating whether to turn back to the car, we pressed on. This was a mistake. We should have left then and there. Instead, we crossed the forest and came to Utruzanoy. It looked no different from Griazi. It had that same emptiness, only without a playground. No movement and no voices could be heard. Just that same vague sense of being watched, which we brushed off as paranoia. Relieved and disappointed all at once, we stopped to smoke and decide what to do next. The sensible choice was to head back to the car and get out, but we were young and restless, so we decided to break into one of the houses and spend the night there. Breaking into the half-rotten house was not hard. Inside, a few pieces of old furniture stood, covered in dust. We poked around, rummaging through what was left. At first glance, it was just tired Soviet furniture and junk. Nothing really worth remembering. Then we found the photographs, and that is when the chill hit us. Every single face was blurred beyond recognition. Even the framed portraits hanging on the walls. In a closet, we discovered several family albums, flipped through them, and saw the same thing over and over. Men, women, children, the elderly, their features erased, their faces just blacked out. From the number of people appearing together, it seemed the house once belonged to a married couple, 3 children, and an old woman. Other relatives appeared in some pictures too, but their faces were just as wrong. Our curiosity only grew, so we forced our way into another house. We searched for more photos and found them. Same story. All of the faces blurred out and blacked out. That is when the fear really set in. We decided to get out before things got any stranger. We headed toward the car at a quick pace. I walked ahead, talking just to fill the silence and not daring to look back. Then I noticed something. No footsteps behind me. I stopped. Then I turned around. No Shavel. A cold weight dropped into my stomach. My hand shook and tears stung my eyes. I told myself he was just messing with me. I called his name, softly at first, then louder. Nothing. No response. Swearing underneath my breath, I went back toward the village to look for him. The first place I checked was the house we had broken into first. What I saw inside froze me where I stood, then sent me running in a blind panic. An old woman, wrapped in filthy rags, was sitting on the floor. In her lap lay Shavel's severed head, and she was stroking it like a cat. I bolted. I ran like Forrest Gump on fire, like Usain Bolt in a nightmare. I ran until I tripped over a log and hit the ground hard. When I looked back, dark shapes were moving towards me, slow but steady. I scrambled up and pushed myself harder, lungs burning, the sound of low, sinister laughter closing in behind me. The forest went on forever. We had not walked through it for long on the way in, but now the trees seemed endless. I should have reached the car by now. Instead, shadows pressed in on all sides. The voices grew clearer. Whispers, giggles, something inhuman. A stabbing pain gripped my side. My vision blurred. I fell, howling like an animal, the world spinning around me. Somewhere nearby, the bushes rustled. Footsteps came closer. Then nothing. In the darkness, my great-grandmother came to me in a vision in my head. I saw her as I had when I was little, visiting her every summer. In the dream, she said, "You see, it wasn't for nothing that I put a talisman against dark forces on you. 16 years have passed since that night, and I am finally telling you this, Anon. I have prosthetic legs now. They found me on the roadside, not far from Utruzanoy. Both of my legs were gone. I don't know how I survived the blood loss, the infection, or any of it. I don't know why they didn't kill me, or take the rest of me. Shavel's body was never found. The photographs that we saw were never found either. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Once, our military unit was sent to the area around the Dariel Gorge. Not right into the gorge, but pretty close to the border. We spent the morning checking out the surroundings. Everything seemed normal. No signs of people, just us. We stayed there for the day, and by nightfall, a recon team was sent out quietly. One shock trooper and a machine gunner was attached to us for backup, so there were 4 of us in total. We geared up and moved out. There was a forest nearby, and some half-ruined houses scattered around. They were clearly abandoned a long time ago. There used to be a Vinik settlement here. One of the houses was familiar to us, the most intact of them all. We called it the Colonel's house. Supposedly, a colonel used to live there back in the day. That place had become a reference point. We'd use it to map the area and mark out the squares. So we moved through the sectors, 2nd, 3rd, then 9th, and eventually into the 4th, right where those ruined houses were. Everything seemed quiet, but the atmosphere was off for some reason. I can't really explain it. Damsky, our machine gunner, was jumpy the whole time. The Colonel's house stood a bit apart from the others, and we had not checked it yet, though the surrounding buildings were already cleared. We stopped to rest for a few minutes. The guys lit up and chatted. Then Lera, Dynamite, suddenly jumped up and said he saw a light in the Colonel's house. We all went quiet, then grabbed our rifles and approached the place slowly. From a distance, we could see it too. It was just a small pulsing glow, like someone smoking a cigarette in the dark. The red light flickered, just like someone taking drags. We estimated the smoker's height, around 170, maybe 175 centimeters. We radioed it in. Possible breach in the sector. Things in the Caucasus were tense then. This was late August or early September, so basically wartime. HQ responded quickly and sent support. We were ordered to get as close to the target as possible and monitor it. If there was movement, we had permission to engage. So we crawled up to the house, got within 8 to 10 meters, and waited. The cigarette was still glowing. Then it moved slightly in the air, like the person was gesturing with their hand. That really did not sit right with us. I mean, who the hell just stands in a forbidden zone in pitch black, openly smoking like that, knowing that patrols are outside? Either they wanted to lure us into a fight, or they were just clueless amateurs. That is what we figured. We watched for about a minute. Then, out of nowhere, the cigarette just dropped straight down, as if someone had let go of it from above. We figured we had been spotted and made the call to move in. Dynamite and I approached the house quietly. Everything was still. We opened the door, ready to shoot if anything moved, but it was empty. Just one other room, which was also empty. But the cigarette was still there, glowing faintly, almost finished. I picked it up and felt something strange. It was still smoldering in a way that did not make sense, like someone was still drawing on it. Thick, timed puffs, like someone invisible was taking drags. We threw it away and checked the other room. It was dead silent, everything covered in dust. No footprints, no disturbance. As we turned to leave, we saw it. Back in the first room, a silhouette hunched over a table in the corner. It was not one of us, that was obvious. The figure just leaned there and did not move. We stepped closer. You know how when you blink, your vision cuts out for a moment? We blinked and it was gone. We walked to the table, covered in dust, undisturbed, no prints, no sign anyone had leaned on it. We looked at each other. We had no idea what to think. Then, out of nowhere, Damsky opened fire with his machine gun on the house, right at us. He started to the right, then swept toward our position. We dropped flat, hugging the floor, screaming at him to stop. But he kept shooting. Good thing he only had 200 rounds in the box. When it finally stopped, we bolted. Our backup was already there, pale as hell, especially Damsky. Everyone was shaking, especially us, though we were more pissed off than scared. We demanded to know what the hell happened. They told us that the moment we walked into the other room, someone started speaking behind them. They could not make out the words. Then a shadow moved behind them and disappeared into the dark. They claimed that while we were near the table, a crowd appeared behind them. One figure put a hand on Dynamite's shoulder, and another pulled out something like a dagger. That is when Damsuke started firing. He swore he did not mean to shoot, but he panicked. We were stunned. We tried to radio it in, but we got nothing except for static. HQ should have heard the shooting long ago, but there was dead silence. About 10 minutes later, the main group arrived. They said they had not heard a thing. No gunfire, not even the machine gun, nothing. We headed back to base together. At base, we got questioned, almost interrogated. The next morning, the three of us, me, Damsuke, and Dynamite, went back to the house to check things out. No bullet holes, no shell casings, no trace of any firefight, nothing. And we all remembered the gunfire clearly. So, who knows what really happened that night? The whole unit knows the story now, but we rarely bring it up, especially those of us who were there. I have a jacket that hangs in my closet. It brings back bad memories. When girls I date notice it, they assume it's mine, that I wore it back when I was a teenager. Must have been a real hooligan, they joke. I usually just smile or make a joke myself, whatever comes to mind. The jacket really does look hooligan-like. Blue, striped, with white sleeves in sharp contrast. The kind school athletes or movie punks used to wear. Lera's older brother had brought it back from America. This was not long before he was sentenced to life in prison for a contract killing. He adored his little sister, and thanks to him, Lera always had everything. The girls in our school boycotted her, probably out of envy. She had short hair, dressed fashionably, and knew every punk in the neighborhood, even some of the adults. She started drinking and smoking early, and behind her back some called her a whore, but no one dared say it to her face. Not after she kicked an 11th grader in the groin and then knocked out 4 of his teeth. At the time, people said her brother had not gone to prison for himself, but for a common cause. They said he was just taking the blame, and that he had friends outside who were told to watch over his little sister. I was not liked in class. I had glasses, hand-me-down clothes, and poor health, so it surprised me when Lera invited me out during the holidays. I agreed. I knew if I refused, she could easily make my school life hell. And as for the yard, well, for people like me, the yard was a combat zone between the apartment and the store. Going out for bread meant getting back alive with as few bruises as possible. Lera, though, was in her element. At school, in the yard, anywhere. People stopped bothering me once they knew I was going out with her. I never understood why she picked me. Maybe because I went to a dance club and studied music. I hated it all, but my mother insisted it was necessary for a future man. I tried beer for the first time with Lera. She just handed me the can, casual, as if it were nothing. I thought my mother would kill me on the spot. I got sick afterward, but I locked myself in the bathroom and no one found out. Lera used to say her brother smothered her with care, and when he went to prison, she decided she could finally live for herself. Looking back, I think she needed someone to care for, and that's why she chose me. Her friends talked only of booze, fights, hookups, but Lera loved books even more than I did. I would sometimes bite my tongue when she admired Pechorin in Hero of Our Time, or Eugene Onegin. Otherwise, I would risk a broken nose. Her idea of a date was drinking on rooftops, or sneaking into cemeteries at night to make out in the crypts. She just liked breaking rules. And to be honest, raised under my mother's and grandmother's constant watch, I liked it too. She made me feel alive. She also had a console, a butterfly knife, and roller skates she let me borrow. It was her idea to go to Kovrinka at night. Everyone in our yard was afraid of the abandoned hospital. They said it was dangerous. They said you could fall through the floors, get mauled by dogs, and run into guards or Satanists. Rumor was that a sect once met there. Nemo Store is what they called the cult. Apparently, they sacrificed animals, even people, until the cops shut them down. Supposedly, the surviving Satanists drowned themselves in the basement. Lera said it would be cool to climb onto the roof, drink port, and have sex there. I did not argue. Secretly, I liked the idea. If I was going to lose my virginity, it might as well feel cinematic. Sure, I was nervous. Kovrinka had a bad reputation, but Lera flicked me on the forehead and promised that she could protect one nerd. That night, I came prepared. Condoms, a bottle of Georgian wine, and a chocolate bar. We climbed the fence and slipped inside. I expected more. At school, they said Kavrinka was like a labyrinth, like in video games. In reality, every floor looked the same. Graffiti covered the walls. There were names, dates, people claiming they cut their veins or fallen into elevator shafts. In one room, a pyramid of empty bottles stood with a child's shoe hanging from the top. Lera said they were whoreform bottles, which was homeless liquor. The drawings unsettled me. There were pentagrams, strange symbols, and faceless figures bleeding from their eyes. Lera dismissed them. She said it was metalheads who had not been punched in the face lately. The sun set, and it grew cold. I did not complain, but Lera noticed me shivering. She giggled at first, then took off her jacket and told me to wear it. I refused, but she insisted. "No point in you freezing," she said. "I am the one who cares the most about tonight." It was too big for me, but warm. By then I was tired, and we still had a few floors to climb. Our staircase ended in a pile of rubble. Lera said we needed to cross the floor to find another, and I followed. The corridor stretched on, and we lit our way with our phones, careful not to trip or fall through the gaps. Eventually, we saw a light ahead. Lera brightened, thinking it was guys she knew who had built a fire. The fire blazed like daylight, but the punks around it looked wrong, too sinister in that place. And on the flames, something skinny was roasting. I think it was a dog. Even Lera tensed. She squeezed my hand and whispered that we should be ready to run. I realized I did not know any of these punks. One noticed us and shouted. Lera yanked my hand and dragged me back toward the stairs. They chased us. My lungs burned. I regretted skipping gym and regretted every second breakfast. Lera ran better than me. Her breath was steady, and she was basically pulling me along. The footsteps closed in, and for the first time I understood how much I wanted to live. The stairwell seemed endless. There were no rails on them. It was just us and them closing in. Then Lera stumbled and twisted her ankle. She cursed, pulled out her switchblade, and barked at me not to stop. She told me to just keep going. I had learned to obey her. So I ran. I ran down the endless stairs. I ran, hearing Lera cursing, waiting for them to reach her. I ran, hearing the cries of pain and the clash of struggle behind me. I knew Lera would not go down easy, and I ran away. They never found her. I was questioned a few times, but nothing came of it. I finished school and joined the army voluntarily. Then I stayed on contract and went through 2 war zones no one reports about. I hoped I would die there, but it seemed I'd already used up my share of luck back in Kavrinka. Now I work in security for a big bank. I have everything. I have money, a car, and benefits. I have scars too, and a heavy stare. Lera could be proud of me now. I became the kind of man she wanted me to be. Maybe she forgave me long ago, but I doubt it. Not just because I ran. After all, she promised she could protect me. The truth is, I was the one who tripped her. I had just wanted to survive. I live with regret every day, knowing I am a fucking coward, and I curse myself for only changing after it was too late. This story is about my aunt's daughter. Let's call my aunt's daughter Tara. My aunt lived in a small 2-flat house way back when, tucked away in a quiet little town. The neighbors were a family from another state, his wife and their son. The boy was very sick. It was some kind of deadly illness. The neighbors were deeply religious, and they worshipped a deity we were not familiar with, and they would perform these intense rituals, chanting in their native language. After those rituals, they would come over and offer the worship food to Tara. She was only 3 years old at the time. At first, it seemed harmless, but it became a routine. Every special day, they would call Tara over and hand her the food. Around the same time, strange things began happening. My aunt started noticing small scratch marks that looked like bite marks on Tara's arms and legs. But Tara was hyperactive. It was easy to just brush it off as just part of being a child. Then came the weekend they left town. My aunt's family went to my grandfather's village for a short visit. They were away just 2 days, but when they returned, everything had changed. One afternoon, Tara was playing with her toys on the floor, laughing like always, and then suddenly, she stopped. Blood started dripping from her nose, and then her mouth, and then her ears, and then she collapsed. They rushed her to the hospital, but she was gone already. The doctors could not explain it. There was no accident, no visible trauma, just unexplained and unstoppable bleeding, and a 3-year-old child that had slipped away within minutes. The real horror revealed itself days later. A few neighbors from nearby towns came whispering stories they had heard about how that particular family, the neighbors, practiced a kind of dark ritual. It was a kind of human sacrifice magic, a ritual exchange, and they claimed to have offered Tara's soul to their deity in return for saving their own child. And the worst part is that the kid who was ill, he completely recovered. He ended up in perfect health.